I'm going to call the Springfield City Council special regular session to order with a roll call.
Mayor Van Gordon.
Here.
Counselor Weber.
Here.
Counselor Moe.
Here.
Counselor Radley.
Here.
Counselor Blackwell.
Here.
And Counselor Stout.
Here, thank you.
There is one time designated for public testimony this evening under public hearings. If you are attending in person, please complete the request to speak card located at the front of the council chambers and turn into the city recorder. If you are joining online with a tablet, smartphone, or computer and wish to speak at either of those at that time, please use the raise hand feature in Zoom. The order of public testimony is as follows: anyone in council chambers, and then anybody who has raised their hand. First item, please.
First item is the interim Ward 5 council appointment process. Mary Bridget Smith is here for this item.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm back here before you to discuss the next step in the process for the council vacancy for Ward 5. So tonight, the objective is to conduct a public hearing to hear the public's input about the process for filling the vacancy and appointing an interim councilor, and then also to have a motion and a vote to approve that process. At our last meeting, the direction was to use the same process as we did before for the Ward 4 vacancy. So the materials you'll see before you are familiar in that they closely mirror that process, which will include an application period of approximately a month. People who are interested will submit a written application. Then those applications will be evaluated at a work session. That's an opportunity for the council to get an idea about if all of the applicants are qualified, if you want to interview everybody or just some applicants. It's really hard to forecast at this point in the process what that will look like because it really depends on how many people apply. Then the next meeting is an opportunity for interviews here in council chambers. They're usually run very similar to your boards and commissions interviews. And then there'll be deliberation and a vote for an appointment. Something to think about in terms of conducting a process that limits liability would be that you adopt the process, follow that process, evaluate all candidates equally, and then do the process consistent with public meetings laws. So that means these would all be in open sessions, no executive session for this type of item. The process includes an outreach component, an advertisement. Staff is ready to put out a media release, boost that with social media, and then have information on the website. The application and potential interview questions are in your packet. It's very general and meant to sort of cast a broad net in terms of people who would be interested and getting general information. So you'll see that the questions are quite general in terms of the application. And then you'll have an opportunity to evaluate, deliberate, and appoint. So I'm ready for you to open the public hearing unless you have questions for me.
Councilor Radley.
Thank you. It's not really, it's kind of a half question and a half wanting just to say it out loud in a public meeting. This appointee will then have to run again next year because
Correct.
the seat would be up. So they just, somehow we need to make sure that they know that they would need to.
Oh,
in the
that's good feedback.
Yeah, they would
Yeah.
need to run in May, actually,
Yeah.
in the primary, and then.
Okay, I can, I'll ask that for the outreach that they make that clear. Or how long the interim appointment would be. Okay. Great.
Well, it always gets trickier. So if you could if we put that out there and make sure we know the end date, because if we end up with somebody that is just maybe interested in being a
Exactly.
placeholder, like knowing that their time does not necessarily end
Yeah.
in May, it's scheduled to end with us in December.
Yes, but the seat is open at the
Yep.
May primary election. Yeah, thank you. That's good input.
All right, any other questions before I open the public hearing? All right, I'm going to open the public hearing. I have one card. Elliot Harwell, please state your name and location in the city for the record.
I had really hoped more people would speak tonight. Hello, my name's Elliot Harwell. I live in Springfield. I'm a resident of Ward 3. I've spoken to the council before. It's always a wonderful opportunity to do so. I understand that appointing someone to an elected position is always a fraught process, especially when it's a council appointing to a position that is typically filled with an election. I reviewed the materials that you provided one of the things that was discussed in it was potentially setting limitations or requirements or some such. It'd be great if the council could articulate those. For instance, if the appointee would come from Ward 5, it would be great for potential applicants to know that ahead of time. Something that was already discussed by Mayor Van Gordon. One consideration would be whether or not the appointment would be through May, at which point the council could appoint whoever wins the primary or the election to that position. Assuming if there's a runoff in that case, they would have to decide if that would then happen in November. Something else that would be nice, independent from all of this, I was originally a student of history. I tried to get my doctorate in it, but stopped at a master's. But the end result is that I really like knowing context for things. And so it would be nice, as someone who lives in Springfield, to know what the context of appointing people to empty positions has been before, even beyond the empty appointment to Ward 4. It'd be nice to know the historical context of how the council has handled this. But at the same time, I would also urge the council to understand that the actions they take tonight are setting an example and for the future. And so in reviewing the past, perhaps the council would determine that things were not done in ways that they like, but they should at least be aware of that and then make a conscious choice about the process they want and what they think would be most equitable. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I don't have any other cards for this item. Neil, do we have anybody online?
No hands for this item.
All right. I am going to go ahead and close the public hearing and see if anybody has more questions for Mary Bridget. All right. Can you help us just clarify with people, because I think Elliot brought this question up that was great, which is when we appoint somebody, no matter what, like that person is in office until December of 26.
That's correct. So the interim counselor's term would be through 26. Let's make sure I have my dates here correctly. So if the interim counselor gets appointed this fall, that person then will start their position right then. The seat, the election for the seat actually occurs the next May, but that term doesn't start until January. So the interim counselor has the same amount of time, has the same length of time for their term. I think what has happened sometimes, or what could happen, or what is related to this, is this idea that if you have a primary election in May, that person wins, there's no runoff. Sometimes the council will decide to appoint that person earlier to start their term earlier, but that would not apply in this situation. The interim gets the time all through 26.
Great. And then I had one other comment before we went to a motion. Is I think the context question is really interesting. And I think, maybe it was Beth's, your seat that was the first time we really did it. But like the written process and the public hearing has been the product of a lot of work that we did probably 2 or 3 years ago, specifically about getting a lot crisper with how we're dealing with these appointments in the public. And we adopted a wholesale change to our operating rules to make sure that we actively solicited public input. We wrote and published a process, and then we followed that end to end. So I think that your comment about just understanding the context of it is really compelling, and knowing that our body has kind of worked through those steps, and that is the product that we see today that we used successfully when we appointed Councilor Blackwell. With that,
I move to approve the process for appointing an interim Ward 5 city councillor.
Second,
well, could you call the vote, please?
Yes, Counselor Weber,
Yes.
Counselor Mo,
Yes.
Counselor Rodley,
yes.
Counselor Blackwell,
Yes.
and Counselor Stout.
Yes, thank you.
Motion passes 5 yeses, 0 nos. I don't think we have any other items. Neil, do we have any other business?
No other items.
All right, then I'm going to adjourn our super special regular session. All right. I would call the Springfield City Council work session to order with roll call.
Mayor Van Gordon,
Here.
Counselor Weber,
Here.
Counselor Mo,
Here.
Counselor Rodley,
Here.
Counselor Blackwell
Here.
and Counselor Stout.
Here, thank you.
We have two items this evening. The first one is the consultant intro and development of 2025 city managers evaluation process.
Good morning, Mayor and Council.
Oh.
Chaim Hertz.
It
Oh,
it is evening.
this evening. Oh, gosh, yeah, sorry. I had like my auto response going. I apologize. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Chaim Hertz, Human Resources Director. It is officially the evaluation season for the City Council and for your direct appointees. During last year's evaluation process, Council directed Human Resources to look into bringing on a consultant firm to oversee the evaluation for the city manager, which had historically been something that Human Resources did. But as we all know, I also work for the city manager, so it created a bit of an awkward process. So through conversations with council leadership, the city engaged with Eric Jensen and Jensen Strategies. So I am here to introduce Eric, who will be overseeing, in partnership with HR, the evaluation process for the city manager for this year. So with that, I'll introduce Eric.
There we go. All right, technology is not my sweet spot. Thank you, Mayor, Council. My name is Eric Jensen. I am the principal of Jensen Strategies. We are a management consulting firm based in Portland. We work almost exclusively with local and state government. We do a lot of collaborative decision-making, organizational development work, which this falls under what we do under organizational development. And we also do recruitments of executive local officials. So what we were hoping to do today is just to kind of do a quick introduction here about our process and how we go about doing our evaluations and what you can expect as we go through. But probably more importantly, we did send to you in advance some proposed criteria to use in the evaluation of your city manager. And I'll talk about that in just a second. So just in terms of the process and the schedule, so today we'll hopefully we'll get a level of comfort from you in terms of the criteria. Following this, we will then interview up to 21 people, including all of you, as well as the department heads and city attorney, and city manager office staff. And those interviews will all be done by Zoom, and they will all be confidential interviews. Those will probably run between about September 15th and September 30th. We'll start scheduling this week for the following 2 weeks. Following that, then we will be preparing a draft report that we will be presenting to you on October 20th in executive session. And that report will summarize the interviews without anything being attributable to any one individual, but responding specifically to the criteria that we're proposing tonight to be able to use. Following that, we'll get any clarifications in terms of if you need any clarifications in the draft report. We will finalize it and come back together again with your city manager, Nancy Newton, on November 10th. And at that point, be able to have a discussion with regard, an executive session with regard to the performance review. And also an opportunity to do some annual goal setting at that point in time. I will also mention that when we get to the point of having a draft report, we will also be, I will be meeting with your city manager, Nancy Newton, to go through that and present it to her as well so that she can ask any questions about clarifications before we finalize it. And then and then, of course, she will be there at the November 10th executive session meeting. Questions about the process before we get into talking about criteria?
Any questions about the process? Okay.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. So what we are proposing is that you use the ICMA, which is the International City County Management Association's criteria that they establish for effective government leaders. These are 14 criteria that are core areas that they suggest are best practices, if you will, in terms of public management and public executive management. They also, ICMA uses these in their trainings and training city managers who become certified city managers. And so we have found this in the past to be a very effective way, if you don't have criteria already established, to be able to evaluate your city manager. So you have that up on the screen, but these core areas are divided into essentially 4 different areas. The first are the principles by which the city manager is guided, if you will. Personal and professional integrity, community engagement, equity and inclusion, staff effectiveness, personal resiliency and development, and then how the city manager is leading through those principles, leading the organization forward in terms of strategic leadership, strategic planning, policy facilitation, implementation, and what you're looking at in terms of the outcomes of that that execution of applying those principles, if you will. And so you have community and resident service and service delivery. And then it highlights the skill sets that you may want to be looking for in your city manager. So technological literacy, financial management and budgeting, human resources management, and workforce engagement, communication, and information sharing. Now, one of the things I want to point out is that as we go through in our process and doing the interviews, it's important to understand that these are qualitative core areas. And so you're not looking to check a box. So for example, strategic planning, to check a box and say, is there a strategic plan, yes or no? It's to look at how is that being handled and and understand the context and the environment that applies to your city, that applies to the resources that you have that the city manager has to work with, the political situation that the city manager has to work with in order to be able to accomplish these things. And that's one of the things that I think our process does very well, is help to set that context in these different areas, so that by the time you get to a point of doing an evaluation in that area, you're not just considering, we're just going to have a check mark here with regard to that particular issue, but we're looking at, given all the circumstances that you have, is the city manager doing the best possible under those circumstances? So the other thing, well, first of all, any questions with regard to these core areas, and does this make sense to you if we were to use these core areas as a criteria moving forward?
Counselor Stout.
Just one comment is that I think some of these are maybe imprecisely defined in my experience. I mean, so I just, equity inclusion, that can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people. So how, in your process, could you explain like how we can adapt that for ourselves so that maybe if we're doing 21 interviews, we're not doing this one versus that one. And now you see where my question is leading.
Yes, Counselor, I do.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now, if you look at the evaluation form that I also sent as part of your packet, it does have a little more description with regard to each of these categories. So take equity inclusion, as you've brought that up, creating an environment of involvement, respect, connection of diverse ideas, backgrounds, and talent throughout the organization and the community. And so understanding in this particular case, how is the city manager working to build that type of environment with those diverse backgrounds, bring in diverse ideas into the mix. I understand there is a certain degree of interpretation here, and that's something that we will grapple with and try to help bring apples to apples and oranges to oranges, if you will, for you. But does that help you a little bit? We can also, give you some additional information as well.
Counselor Weber.
So is this something that we would be understanding through the interview process, how to kind of rank some of these based on the feedback we receive in those interviews? I'm looking at this and understanding this is our first year with this, and goal setting will make a huge difference next year as how we rank these. But in this initial year, I think it's going to be a little bit tricky. And we're all going to look at this in a potentially very different way. So I'm just kind of wondering, like, to maybe drill in a little bit into some of the do we set maybe 3 expectations underneath each one of these? Just kind of, thinking through that. How do we come to some fair and reasonable way to rank these for this year?
I think what you'll find is once we get through the interview process, you'll be able to see that there are themes that come out of those processes that will help to inform your ranking. We highly encourage you not to fill out the rating form until such time as we've had the opportunity to share with you the results of the interviews. And then possibly and have an opportunity to talk with the city manager, because the city manager may have some perspectives to share on that as well. That's part of that discussion that would happen at that last executive session.
Counselor Wadley.
Thank you. So I'm going to talk about why I appreciate this actually. And I like that we're tying it into ICMA, because then we're part of a bigger perspective, and that it's going to be kind of unique to our situation based on how those interviews go. I actually really like the criteria because, the city manager job does not exist from A to B. It's not a black and white line, and it totally exists in the context of this evolving, changing world. And I think that's part of what we've come up against as our council has changed each time we've done a review, and our processes are changing. And so I love a good process. And I was reading through each of these and I thought, no, I really appreciate some of these, personal resiliency and strategic leadership. And these are things that a city manager needs that maybe doesn't show up in your everyday, anybody could use performance review process. So those are the reasons that I like this. And I also appreciate that you will be doing the interviews. So there's this centralizing of how you're taking in the data, and then we're going to get to kind of pour over that and see how that works. So I'm feeling positive and leaning into how this process is going to go. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions?
So one other point that I'd like to raise with regard to the criteria, we always recommend that both the council and the city manager be comfortable with the criteria moving forward. And I neglected to mention at the beginning that I did have an opportunity to talk today with your city manager, and Nancy was comfortable moving forward with these criteria.
Nancy, do you have anything to add to this?
No, I just wanted to thank the mayor and council for putting, I think what I'm trying to do is lay some breadcrumbs, right? For, we have had, I was thinking reflectively a little bit because, you know, this time comes up, and out of the original 7 members of council that I talked to when I first joined the city, there are 2 that are on the council right now. And that's a lot of change in a 5-year period. So hopefully this process will do to accomplish 2 things. One, it will ease James' workload a little bit, and whatever struggles he may have having to run the personnel evaluation process for his boss. I can't imagine. And then secondly, you know, help future city managers as well, so that we can have a baseline. And this is criteria that meets kind of best practice for the public administration. So I appreciate your willingness to lean into something different.
Councilor Mo, you and I have now made it to the final 2.
All right. I'd also like to mention at this time that I'll have one other person assisting me with the interviews. His name is Jeff Aprati. He is also an experienced public administrator. So you may be interviewing with me, or you may be interviewing with Jeff, but it'll be one of the 2 of us that will be doing the interviews. So just in terms of next steps, Chaim is going to be sending out communications to everyone who's on the interview list, letting them know that we'll be contacting them to set up an interview. Then you will get an interview or an email from Emily Reeder in our office, who will work with you to set up your interview time on Zoom. So we'll be getting those scheduled so we can get those done between the 15th and the 30th of September. And then following that, then of course, we have the executive session on October 20th with the draft report, and then the final session on November 10th with the city manager and doing the goal setting at that time.
All right, I'm looking around, and there are I think we're all excited to do this for the first time. Thank you for coming in and, you know, helping us get more organized. This has been an area that we've wanted to improve our process for a long time, and it feels good to sort of launch it. One question I did have is, we have 2 other employees that are council directed. We're not doing them quite yet. And I see Chaim going, not quite yet. But is this a similar process we could use with our other employees? Is this pretty portable, or would you say it's a city manager specific thing?
Mayor, if I could ask for clarification with regard to your other employees, are you talking about council, the council hires, or?
Correct. So the council has hires the judge and hires the city attorney.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Yeah. Great. Chaim, did we give you guys everything you needed?
You did, and I appreciate the dialogue and discussion. We're likewise on the HR side very excited to have this process in a direction that council has been asking for. So we look forward to the outcome.
Great. Thank you both. We're looking forward to it.
Thank you.
All right. So Stan's coming down for transportation funding priorities, part due.
Good evening, council, mayor. Yeah, so back for round 2, I've incorporated some of the changes, and some of the staff came up with some ideas too, some slight adjustments to the scoring matrix. So really the 2 parts here are kind of to look at the scoring matrix and all the criteria. And there was a lot there. I tried to fit it all into one sheet so that it wasn't too many different exhibits there, but it's pretty small print, so I can kind of explain any of that as we go. And then the other part of it is really to come out of here with a project selected. We've recommended 2. But if council feels strongly that, you know, a different project, we can get into that after we kind of go through the scoring matrix changes. We have MPO funding negotiations coming up before the next meeting, so really need to come out of here with a direction on a project. So some of the changes, we heard access to key destinations, so we added that as a priority. Local street repair kind of seemed unanimous that that was very important, so we added that. We've combined preservation into one priority. We had full depth reclamation and preservation kind of as two separate ones. We also emphasized pedestrian safety in the safety priority. And the definitions of kind of how we score the 1, 2, and 3, the safety is kind of described more with the pedestrian emphasis. Also, we increased the safety factor to 1.5. As I mentioned before, all the factors kind of had equal weighting. And so we all kind of agreed, as well as council, that that was probably more important to have safety. And we also raised the weight of preservation to 1.5 because we just get more bang for buck on preservation versus the full rebuilds. And by taking the full rebuild out of the scoring matrix, it kind of put more priority there. And then we also, staff recommended active transportation as being separate. We had that combined with green infrastructure and green improvements. So that's now kind of a separate priority. I also want to say, if there's questions, this is a work session, feel free to stop me and ask questions as we go. I think it might be easier just kind of have a back and forth as we go rather than me read through all this. So if anybody has any questions on that so far. Okay. So then I was just going to go through and kind of go through the different priorities and kind of talk just briefly about each one. So safety, you know, low improvements such as like preservation projects and areas that we don't have documented crash safety problems, those would be like a 1. A 2 would be kind of like bike lanes, lighting improvements, signing, things that increase the safety a little more. And then high safety improvements such as like filling sidewalk gaps, separated bike paths, roundabouts, or areas where we know we have high crash data or serious issues. And I got little notes below a couple of them. So for safety, we do use like the ODOT system, the SPIS layer. And I know there's a question last time about the police records. And we basically use all the information, and we have a lot of feedback that we get from citizens. We keep a log of all that. And so it's kind of a combination of all those as far as determining where the safety issues are. And then continuing existing projects, pretty straightforward. If it's a continuing project, it gets a high 3 rating. And if it's not one that's already been planned out, you know, it's more of a 2, and something kind of way out on the horizon would be a 1. We look at like the TSP and the CIP for those. Preservation, pretty straightforward. If it's got a little bit of pres, typically it's either almost all pres or not, but sometimes we might have a project where, you know, there's half of it needs a full rebuild and half needs a pres. So typically those are 1s or 3s, but we might have one in the middle where it's kind of half and half. Local street repair, you're going to see on the scoring matrix in a sec that all of these projects got 0s, and that's because this funding, the MPO funding, doesn't allow us to do local street repair. But when we use this matrix in the future, that will definitely factor in where we have funding that can be used for any type of project. The local projects will get more priority. Also, out of all the projects that we have selected, one of the ones that rose to the top is more of a local type of feel. It's a collector rather than an arterial, and it's in a neighborhood. So it does have more of a local feel, and it's going to have more benefit to the local system around it by taking traffic off. Go ahead.
So the MPO funding would
Yeah.
be able to go to
It-
that, even though it's a local.
Yeah, because it's a collector, not a local street. But it's going through a neighborhood. It's going to facilitate development. So it's going to benefit the neighborhood there more than like a Mohawk or something, you know, a Centennial or something like that. So out of all of our projects that are selected, it kind of has more of the local feel. Low income disadvantage, we use Oregon Social Equity webpage. It has regions that show low, medium, high for social equity. And so that's kind of a combination of, is it in one of those areas? And then does the benefit from the project benefit people that are in that category and that high or low, medium disparity? Carbon reduction, environmental benefit. Lower projects would be ones that have lower benefit, like just adding bike lanes. Moderate reduction in environmental benefit would be like permeable pavement, street trees, bioswales. And then high benefit are more like multi-use paths, bike share, complete streets, green infrastructure, safe routes to school, and EV charging stations. Active transportation, Low are kind of like sharrows where you're sharing the road with cars, wider sidewalks, marked crossings at intersections. Medium are more like refuge islands, raised crossings and filling the gaps. And then high would be separated multi-use facilities, bike signals, and rectangular rapid flashing beacons, which we've been doing a lot of those. And then access to key destinations, that was one that we added. That one is part of like other priorities, like with the transportation system planning and some of the other RTP stuff. So that's, we had to pick something because that one was really kind of tough. It's like, how do you really define that? So this one may be one where as we go, we kind of adjust, but we just came up with less than 2 key destinations. 2 to 5 is medium and greater than 5. And then we kind of put a radius around the project area to look within there if there's schools, shopping centers, things like that. It's another one where it's kind of a feel, but we wanted to put some metrics to it so we actually have numbers. And what we did is we looked at some of the main streets around and we kind of started looking at counting up destinations, and we kind of went to the maximum and the minimum and then came up with that range. And then economic development and growth. Preservation projects, lighting, signing improvement, adding trees would be kind of a low project. Economic development and growth. Projects with more moderate influence on economic development would be like traffic congestion relief and adding sidewalks in existing streets. And then high would be something that has high economic development and growth, such as utility extensions, new streets, roundabouts, and developing neighborhoods. And one of the projects we're going to see has that high development potential. And then resiliency, this one, low resiliency projects would be things that prevent natural disaster and climate change on a moderate level, like drainage improvements, helping with flooding, slightly raising street elevations. And number 2 would be something like relocating assets, which is typically tends to be not financially feasible, permanent permeable pavements and green streets. And then high would be things like seismic retrofitting of bridges, levee improvements, redundant transit routes, and ITS, intelligent transportation systems, which we don't have yet, but that's something that maybe someday it's an ideal that we would like to have. Let me just stop there. And
Are there any questions? The one clarification, go ahead, Councilor Blackwell.
I just had a clarifying question on the safety. You mentioned it's 1.5. So are you taking that number and timesing it by 1.5 to give it more weight?
Yeah,
And
so
that's
when you
how
see
it's-
the matrix, we can just pull that up now. Maybe if we can put that up on the screen. It's kind of hidden. I have them up there at the very top in the parentheses. So each one of these 1 through 3s gets multiplied by that factor. So any of the safeties, if it's a 3, it basically gets a 4.5 score. Yeah. Or if it's a 2, and so on. So if you look at the projects there,
Hang on, Stan.
yeah, go ahead.
Councilor Broadbent.
Thank you. So first of all, I just want to say, for just the good of the order, as a process person, tonight is just feeding my soul with all of this, with all of these fantastic processes, and it's just leveling up to how we make decisions. I'm curious, when you say we, like how many of you and who were the ones who were like applying the process to get to these numbers?
Sure. We have transportation planning staff. We have our capital projects manager. We involve operations, myself. It's about, 8 to 10 people. And I think they solicit feedback from their staff as well. So then we come together as a group, and we've had several meetings I present what the council has shared, and then they come up with ideas and feedback, and then we've just kind of blended it all. So I'm kind of taking everything and putting it together, but it's a group of about 10 of us. So.
Councilor Stout.
I really, really appreciate you prioritizing safety like you did. You guys really took, frankly, my own comments and ran with them. So I can't tell you how listened to I feel right now. I'm loving. Please keep going.
Thanks. Yeah, I came away from that meeting thinking, and I was saying everything should be weighted the same, and I just couldn't come to grips with it in my head. And I thought, yeah, safety is like at the top. So thank you. So yeah, the matrix here with the scores, you can see they're all pretty close until you get kind of down near the bottom. So that is the thing. There's not a huge differential there, but you can just kind of go across and see Franklin north-south. So if you're not all familiar with that, it's the McVeigh Highway. It's the connection from the biggest new roundabout there on Franklin south. That's important because there's development there that we want to encourage on both sides of the highway there. And so this would add sidewalks, all the modern stuff, roundabouts, separated bike lanes and sidewalks, and yeah, would allow for development and economic growth there. The downside is that it requires CETA reimbursements because we don't have local match money in our road fund anymore. We're kind of, the costs keep going up and the amount that's going in, the revenue going in is going down. And so we just, in the next few years, we're not going to have that as a match. So we're looking at other match sources such as CETA reimbursements and SDC improvement funds, but the SDC improvement funds have to be for projects that add capacity. So we can't do like preservation type of jobs with that. So that's why these two kind of, there's the second one there, and that one is in design. So that one kind of, that's what the gray is that one's already in design. The red one was Mohawk, and that's kind of more of an emergency. Like we have to do that, and we have that in design. It's nearing completion of design. We've found some funding to do that. We're going to use our capital reserve interest to do that. So
But that would be a complete rebuild from the bridge to the intersection.
this is a Band-Aid. Yeah. The bigger project is down there, Mohawk and Q. It's kind of down further on the list, but that is there, and we still are going, we have that project in mind. But I think the first thing on that project is a study to get the cost and to see, like what the right-of-way impacts are, what the footprint would be to get it. It's just such a big project that I think the first step is a study.
Yeah, I'm trying to think about how to continue to explain that to the public. So really, when we say like the final sort of solution for that intersection is going to require a very large study, right? And so we're going to apply another Band-Aid to get us to essentially studying what that complete, I guess, expansion of that intersection would be.
Yeah, because I mean, we're thinking it could potentially be a roundabout there. That's always kind of the first thought. But if the study would tell us that, how much is a roundabout versus conventional? Does it make sense? Does the traffic flow there? It basically, it looks at that, and out of that study, we would be told, yes, do a roundabout, or no, conventional intersection. Also, there's a massive wastewater line there that's in disrepair and really needs to be fixed. And you can't really fix that without tearing up the entire intersection. It's a big project in itself. And how much that's going to cost and the phasing of how you do that it gets complicated. So yeah, I think the first best step would just to do a study so that we can kind of also that lines you up better for funding when you have some specifics and about how much it's going to cost and what you're going to do. And
Yeah, so yeah, and that all makes sense to me. What I'm thinking about is that, like, as we kind of talk about how we develop our transportation priorities, we're going to have to kind of lead the public through a conversation where they're going to experience essentially a priority intersection for them, go through another patch, right? And then get to another study, and just having a second to talk about talking points around with the council, because we will have, like, that's a question we will get, and it will be okay. And we will, once we get our head around how to explain it, it's going to help a ton. But if the public experiences it in that order, they're going to have a lot of questions about it.
Okay, gotcha. So yeah, so the two that kind of came up out of the scoring matrix are Franklin North South, and like I say, that I think also thinking there's other needs in the Glenwood area than this project, and specifically the riverfront, and also the east-west project that we're currently working on. So we thought maybe it would be better to go with the 48th Street project. It checks a lot of the boxes. It has that more local feel. It also, I think, will score better funding-wise than Franklin North South. So that was staff's recommendation, is to go with 48th Street. And there are a bunch of other projects there that are further down. And this is just, this one set of priorities. So
could you just talk more about what that project is? Because the way I read that is it's the north side, but you say it's from...
So it's Main Street to...
so it's the south side to Daisy.
Yeah. It's a brand new connection. So there's a bike path there right now. There's a little piece at the north end that just kind of stops there, and then the bike path is kind of alongside of it. So it would be a new street that connects north and south, and then the bike path would be separated and be a 12-foot wide separated bike path. There's also some wetlands there that we're thinking we could potentially use for wetland credits and banking. And then I know there's a big piece of private development there that wants to happen, but it hasn't penciled out. So this would facilitate, housing too. So it checks off the housing box as well. Like, I think a significant amount of housing there.
Okay, I would keep talking through this. The portion I keep thinking about is when we think about how the public kind of experiences how we're using our transportation dollars, right?
Mhm.
Like we would essentially use all of them on that one section, right? When we still have a lot of preservation needs that sort of exist broadly across the community, right? Like the Jasper one and some of the 42nd, or some of the Marcola ones, right? Popped up, but keep working your way through the list. I'm sure we'll have more questions. Go ahead, Councilor Radley.
Questions. So I'm curious in reading this, and maybe you're going to explain it, maybe you have, but I just want to get it out there for everybody. So we've got these two in green. We have to choose one. Then it says the future projects are in order of ranking, but I want to make this assumption that the project we don't choose in the green would become the second project? Or-
Correct.
Okay, so
Yeah.
it doesn't just, okay.
Yeah,
Thank
according
you.
to the points, yep. Another factor with the Franklin North-South is that it would have to be phased. We're only going to get so much money and we don't know. I put a $5 million estimate out there, but that's just a guess. It depends on how the negotiations go with MPO. There's other cities that need funding and it's different every time. So that's another kind of downside is that you're starting a project that you can't, it's going to have to be phased, but that's typically how the big projects are. Whereas this one, we think that we could potentially even have a little bit of savings left over. And it also depends on, how much developers are going to potentially help out and pay for. So a little bit could be used for something else as well. But the preservation is difficult because we don't have the street fund anymore to match with that. And so, yeah, we have to do something that adds capacity just because that's the only funding we have to match with. So. Trust me, it's hard to, it's really difficult for the public to say, well, they're over here building this street or they're working on Franklin and we have other streets that are deteriorating, but that's a funding discussion and a whole nother topic to talk about. I think that's pretty much what I have. If we could talk through some of the other projects on here, but they're probably honestly going to be a ways out. The sidewalk and ADA transition plan, that's one to basically just get a better definition of what the needs are as far as sidewalk. We have lots of projects that are upgrading sidewalks and doing ADA work, but our inventory isn't very tight. And so it'd be good to have an inventory of the entire city so we can prioritize where to go and maybe even put out a separate project just to do ADA type of stuff. Gateway Beltline, I think everybody knows of that.
Yeah.
It's, big problem, big issue that is lingering out there. Mohawk and Q, we just talked about that one. 42nd, that one is really more timing. We do have quite a bit of funding set aside for that one, but we're kind of waiting on the levy project. And I was just in a meeting for that. That's going along well. We're looking at alternatives with the Corps and kind of refining that down. I think pretty soon we should have a solution from the Corps on what they're going to do. We did get another 5 million from the Corps on that. It was 10 and now we have 15. So that's good. We're going to be able to fix it better.
It needs all the fixing it better it can get.
Yeah, we're only going to be able to do what we can do, but I think no matter what, it's going to solve the problem. It's just they're looking at shifting the river and a lot of big things that probably are way out of the picture of funding, but yeah. And then Jasper Road, 32nd tracks to South 42nd, that's project. And then Marcola 42nd to the bridge. The county is doing the bridge and everything east out into the county. And so they were hoping that we could do our section as well to kind of have that whole entire stretch brought up to standards. But it's like, we got a lot of other things on the plate.
I was surprised that 42nd to the bridge was that expensive.
Yeah.
Right? But Councilor Stout.
I hate to go back to the 48th Main to Daisy, and we're adding a new street. So we're going to have another connection to Main Street.
Yeah. So in a way that it does kind of help with preservation because it'll draw traffic off of the older streets, the other local streets. So that it's not a preservation, it's a new project, but we think that it will pull traffic away from the other streets.
What would you say about somebody who says that might just induce more demand to use those streets?
Yeah, that's not typically my experience, but it's possible. Yeah.
Okay.
Typically people, where the new smooth street is and the safer street, people tend to gravitate towards that. But yeah, you never know. There's also intersections, right? There's intersection at Main, and depending on how that works, and there's different destinations, but ideally, it's going to be nice because there won't be a lot of access onto it. It'll be kind of a straight shot between the two.
I guess I think what I'm trying to figure out is we're adding yet another place for us to access a 45-mile-an-hour road, or it might be lower than that, but just how people are driving
Yeah.
from a pretty slow neighborhood road.
Right.
And I'm concerned about that change and the price tag to add that on there. That's I think my initial feedback. I'm like, I don't know if that's the right direction we should be going.
Go ahead.
Councilor Blackwell.
And that would connect to a pretty large housing development.
Yeah.
So I like that project
Okay.
personally between the two, because it sounds like we have the funds that we can do it, possibly even some left over. And it does connect to that large development neighborhood. So you're and sharing with the other streets too. I think it would bring less congestion in there. And
Okay.
Yeah, there are ways to your concern, Stout, about the speed. You know, there's different things we can do to keep that down, and we definitely don't want to encourage speed differentials and make anything more unsafe. So yeah, our traffic folks are pretty good at that. So.
I've been taking a second to look at the map because I'm like 48th, you know, and it didn't ring a bell. Council Weber.
First, this looks really good. It's really clear and easy to work through. But I just have can you maybe help me understand or educate me on the Franklin Phase 1? How many phases are there? Do we know? And what does that like?
For the
What does
north-south
that mean?
section that's at the top here.
Yeah, what does that phasing mean?
We think we could probably get from the railroad crossing bridge, the next intersection would be a roundabout just south of that bridge, and that's about it. So we would connect into where the new concrete and the new roundabout kind of ended there, bring that underneath the bridge, new roundabout, maybe a little bit further to the south, and then that's it for the first phase. Go ahead, Cora.
Councilor Rodley.
And you said that would include sidewalks and bike paths and things. There's so many people who walk and try to move along that road. So,
Yeah, definitely.
okay, thank you.
I guess one question I had about the McVeigh section, right, is it 10 million to get to the roundabout, or is that just what you think the first phase would, or is it 10 million to get to the south part of the city?
It's probably more than that. We're thinking 5 to do that first roundabout and just the piece to connect to the other roundabout from one side of the bridge to the other. The whole project, I'm not sure. We haven't really costed that out. We have a consultant right now doing preliminary design up to preliminary. And so they're going to produce a cost estimate of that should be pretty accurate and tell us the whole entire project cost. But that's the thing, we don't totally know yet. So it could potentially be 6 million or 7 million. And then now we don't have quite enough to do the roundabout. And so we're just doing a part underneath the roadway. It's concrete pavement. It's pretty wide and it adds up.
Yeah. So when I think about that part of the road, I think the priority is to get to the roundabout, because when you listen to the economic development sort of strategy, what people are talking about back there, getting that piece of infrastructure in place is the critical piece. I don't know how much value it would have to go to do a section shorter than that, getting to that roundabout, even if we had to do the roundabout first and then work our way back.
Right.
Because if you listen to how those landowners really sort of chat about, developing their land, right, that the intersection development is the part that the critical piece is.
Right. Yeah, I agree.
Anybody? Go ahead, Councilor Stone.
Just one more thing. I agree with Mayor Van Gordon on that. And I think it's incredibly crucial, just absolutely crucial, that whenever we're designing a new intersection or roundabouts, anytime that there's a business that has a business use, we have a conversation with the business directly to ask them how it's going to impact their traffic flows. Because, whether you're hauling steel or bread or whatever you're doing, or pipes, that if they're not consulted, it'll make your day worse than mine.
Yeah, no, totally. Early consultation with them, public outreach for sure. We do truck turning templates too, so we can show them, ask them what their largest vehicle is. And a lot of times it's a fire truck, so they're good, but.
Right. Thank you.
Thanks.
And I think the other place that I had questions about as far as a project that was evaluated, and I'm looking at the map and I'm not sure if it's 51st place or 52nd place, but there's an undeveloped road that acts, is a major thoroughfare from that new housing development that is gravel. And we've got all those kids sort of walking up and down that, up that road towards, I think it's Riverbend Elementary out there. And so in principle, I'm fine with 48th, but I think the question that I have is when we look at other connection points, you know, the additional subdivisions down there have made that into a major thoroughfare when it wasn't designed to be, and it's basically all gravel, and we've got kind of mix. We've got people walking in the streets with cars. So did we evaluate that as a potential upgrade?
Not that I know of, but I can check to see, if that's.
Yeah.
Not off the top of my head, but yeah, I'll look into that.
Okay. Any other comments? Because I think what we're saying is you're good to go to the MPO with the Franklin portion, and we've given you some more detailed feedback with with 48th and Main. But I'd like to, get a note back about, and again, it could be South 52nd Place, it could be South 51st. We'd have to drive out there. I'd know it if I saw it.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
then if we could get some just some bullet points and, some communication from around, and this may not be a Stan thing, I'm looking over at Neil for this one, around the bridge to the Mohawk intersection or to the Marcola intersection, that's going to help us quite a bit. Because if we're going to patch it again, people are going to ask questions.
Yeah, Mayor, I can add in just an appreciation to Stan for listening to the council the last meeting and putting that information in the document. But we talk about that Mohawk area quite a bit and how we're going to get that message out. Because you're right, it is going to be, I think, more than a Band-Aid. It'll be a pretty nice intermediate until the sewer line is fixed. But definitely something we need to do a good job of making sure the public has the access to the information so they know what's going on.
Yeah, and I think it's valuable to also point out that the work the council has done around transportation funding, the money to study that intersection has been on the top of our list. Didn't come through, but it is something that is on our radar. All right, Steve.
One more thing to add about that, we're using fiber reinforced asphalt as well. It's kind of not new, but it's not as used, and you get more bang for the buck, so it should last a little longer than a normal inlay.
So how does it, and maybe this is a longer question, but how will it stand up versus the truck traffic that we were expecting that little jaunt to experience?
Yeah, we've used it several times already, and we've monitored, and it's doing really well.
That's good.
This is going to be the highest ADT, daily traffic that we've had it on so far, but it'll do better than regular asphalt.
Is that the plastic dog hair?
Yeah, basically. Yep, it's mixed in with the asphalt.
It's great stuff.
Yeah.
See if Councilor Stout is, a promoter. Oh, Councilor Mo.
What is fiberglass?
It's fiberglass put into the asphalt.
What is it?
It's fiberglass, yeah, that's mixed into the asphalt.
They've used lots of additives over the years.
Uh-huh.
Broken glass, stuff like that, way back.
Mm-hmm.
You don't know that, do you?
Yeah, I'm a big proponent of it. I think you get more bang for the buck. In a situation like this, it's ideal. So, yeah.
All right. Do you have all the direction you need?
So just to Franklin versus 48th, and then we're going for 48th with MPO funding. Or
if we have to choose between the two, I would say 48th right now.
Yeah.
Okay. If we can squeeze Franklin in, I think I think the most important thing for that intersection is the roundabout. So if we get the dollars figured and we can kind of size it and squeeze it in.
Okay. Gotcha.
And thanks for taking this one on, Stan. I know we always have a lot of questions when it comes to roads and trying to keep get everything paved and up to spec.
I'll be back this fall with the CIP update, which will be more recycling projects than adding new because of the funding and stuff. But
yeah,
thank you.
Right, thank you. All right, I'm going to adjourn the work session, and we will be back at 7 o'clock for CETA.